There we go. Hi, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Doug Denny, the Director of Technical Marketing for the Dedicated Infrastructure Business Unit here at Rackspace. And today we're joined by our guests Shantu Roy and Ken Lamoureux. Before we go into introductions, I'm going to do some housekeeping real quick. For those of you who have watched the Cloud Office Hours series for the last couple of years, hosted by Alan Bush and Drew Cox, you'll know that they have a show where they bring experts to the table to talk about all the things that are going on in the world of multi-tenant cloud. But at Rackspace, we also sell a lot of single-tenant dedicated infrastructure solutions. Our customers have been asking us questions in response to the Cloud Office Hours series about the purpose and the role of dedicated infrastructure in today's cloudy world. So we spun up this deep dive series to cover those sorts of topics. And we host these hangouts on the second, third, and fourth Wednesday of every month, and every month we have a different theme that we focus on, such as performance or security or hybrid, you name it. And this month, the month of March, our theme is performance. And in each session, we try to talk about real-world stuff, right? We talk about architectures that are derivative of things that we've learned from our customers, or we talk about reports that we show reports that we generate for our customers with the different offerings that we have, and we make reference architectures or assets available for you to download after or during the Hangout. So you should be able to fill out a form right now as you're watching, if you're watching on demand, and retrieve those assets. Or if you're watching on demand as well, you should be able to do the same. If you're watching live and you have questions, please use the Google Hangout Q&A tool to submit questions to us. We will queue those up over the course of the show, and then towards the back half, we will make sure we answer all the questions that have been submitted. And if you're watching on demand, please submit your questions to customercare@rackspace.com. That goes to me and my team, and we'll make sure that we get answers back to you. So thanks for sitting through the housekeeping. Let's jump here to our guests, Shantu and Ken. Let's start with you, Shantu. This is your second time on the show. Remind the audience who you are and what you do for Rackspace.
Thanks, Doug, and yeah, thanks for having me back. So I'm the CTO for the VMware practice at Rackspace.
Very cool. And how long have you been here?
Let's see, approaching 3 years now.
Very cool. Well, thanks for joining us again. We've got a lot to talk about today. And then, Ken, how about you, sir?
Yeah, my name is Ken Lamoureux. Happy to be on the show today. I'm a product architect at Rackspace. I've been at Rackspace for about 3.5 years. And my primary role at Rackspace has been working with the VMware product portfolio and looking at how we can provide that as solutions to our customers. Coming up with a standardized architecture design so that we have a solution that we can support with our customers, and integrating that solution into our support services.
Very cool, and thank you for your time today as well. For the audience, I'm just going to frame up what it is we're here to talk about today. So we're going to dive into what we call our Rackspace Dedicated vCenter offering. And we're going to talk about how customers can extend their on-premise data center, virtual data center, to ours, so to speak, through what we generally refer to as the data center extension use case. And over the course of that conversation, we'll talk about leveraging your existing investments in technology and skill sets around all things VMware, while benefiting from the cloud-like properties of a hosted offering. We'll talk about what the user experience is like, what a Vert administrator can expect when managing hosted vSphere at Rackspace that's interoperating with infrastructure they manage on premise. And finally, we'll talk a little bit Rack Connect Global, which we studied in depth a couple shows ago. But we'll talk about how Rack Connect Global brings this idea of data center extension to life, how that makes it a reality. So before we get into all that, Shantu and Ken, let me get your quick sort of high-level overview of what Rackspace does with VMware, the portfolio, all things that we do with VMware today.
Sure, absolutely. So it's interesting. I think it's not common or widely known. Rackspace has been selling hosted VMware products since about 2006. So we've been doing this for quite a while now. I think to date we have over 60,000 VMs under management and about, I believe, a touch above 9,000 hypervisors that we manage. So again, we've been doing this at scale. We have And you mentioned the dedicated vCenter solution, but we have two other solutions as well. We have one called Server Virtualization that's been kind of our product since 2006. The consumable there is the VM, where the whole idea here is to turn over all management and all feeding and care of the infrastructure over to Rackspace, where we have teams that monitor, that do proactive, security and monitoring requirement on the infrastructure, letting you, the customer, just consume the VMs themselves. And then we have also two other products that got released in the last, I'd say, 24, a little over 24 months. We have the dedicated vCenter, which we'll talk in a little bit more detail today, and then the dedicated vCloud Director, which is, again, much more in the solutions kind of focused and pointed towards the enterprises and businesses that are looking to extend their on-prem solutions into a hosting provider. And so in our offerings, like I think you've talked with other offerings here at Rackspace, it's not just a very singular offering. We can tie it into other components and other offerings at Rackspace, allowing your move to virtualization or the cloud to be more systematic, if you will. But yeah, so as a whole, that's kind of what the offerings are.
Yeah, and another way to also address the differences there with that server virtualization product, as Shantu mentioned, customers really are just focused on the virtual machines themselves. So as a customer, you have access to the operating system within that virtual machine. You can manage and administer that system, put your applications and data into that to accomplish what you want. With dedicated vCenter, that's really focused more towards the IT segment, where we're going to manage that infrastructure, the hardware that vCenter service is running on, as well as the vCenter services, all the VMware services. We'll manage that for you, but we give you API access and direct web client access, so you can create the virtual machines in that environment and manage that lifecycle, the virtual machine lifecycle yourself. And in the vCloud offering, that one targets a little more towards IT that wants to have a service available to their internal customers, and they can sort of set things up and then turn it over to internal teams to deploy virtual machines or vApps of services that they can just pull from a template catalog.
Yeah, and just one more point that Ken just touched on is the ability for us to be able to give our customers a varying degree of control, but keep it contained within manageability and security around it, which is, in my opinion, unique in the industry.
Very cool. Thanks. That helps a lot. And so, I mean, to oversimplify what I just heard, we have offerings that we kind of put our offerings in two buckets when we talk about VMware Rackspace. We have an offering that is for people who are tasked with delivering an application, and they want the benefits of vSphere, things like HA, vMotion, DRS, but they don't necessarily want to manage and configure all that. And then we've got a set of offerings for people whose job is to deliver infrastructure to their own customers who think about apps, right? IT. And so for those folks, they in order to interoperate with the existing investments they have in their own data center, we need to give them more control. And so that's what our dedicated vCenter and vCloud offerings allow those customers. Is that a fair assessment of?
Yeah, I think so. I think our whole goal here is to stay out of our customers' way. Enable them to do what they need to do, but the quote unquote mundane tasks of infrastructure management and stuff, we want to take that. We want to cover and help our customers there with that, so they can focus on what it is that they are, going to market with.
Okay, very cool. Well, then, so we're going to dive into that second bucket a little bit, or a piece of it, and really zero in on dedicated vCenter, because we're finding that offering is resonating quite a bit with customers over the last year. And so I'm going to flip over to that. We should also now be displaying a reference architecture to the viewers as well. And so with that up, let's talk about something real quick, which is this whole sort of cloud dilemma for IT, right? I think everybody who's watching this is familiar with the whole how do I get to the cloud problem, but we specifically want to zero in on what that means for IT, right? Folks that report into a CIO, who I've seen personally kind of really wrestle with this, because they have a whole way of life in their data center that they manage. They know that their customers in the business are using third-party multi-tenant clouds, but for IT, you don't just flip a switch and make Amazon work. right? There's a bit more of a journey, right? So tell me a bit about what you're seeing when it comes to IT trying to get to figure out how to make the cloud work for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the quote-unquote move to the cloud is a consistent mantra that we hear it. We've even kind of dialed back to the last couple of VMworlds. That's definitely been a focus and area of attention. And you're right. I mean, being a CIO today, it'd be a difficult task because there's a lot of noise out there. And yet you have the burden of making sure that as you are making this journey, that you can deliver things and keep your service lifecycle management working, keeping the lights on the infrastructure, all that thing. So there's a lot to it, especially from a central IT's perspective, that's trying to attain. So it's not just simply moving workloads. That's a very BU or a business unit specific ask. But from central IT, there's a whole they need a partner in this journey. I mean, and that's where I think Rackspace, given our ability to do anything from managed hosting all the way up to the cloud, gives us the ability to present our customers with a portfolio of here are certain candidates that might be perfect for our public cloud or what have you, right? And now that we do support on Amazon and Azure, we can wrap that into the picture as well. But for just moving out of a data center and taking that in a very step-by-step fashion, there's offerings, in my opinion, again, going back to the, not taking away too much control for the sake of security, but being able to maintain that. We've, in the years that we've been in business, we've figured out how to do it at scale and do it really well.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, is the major, from a business case perspective, to think about, why VMware and why VMware at Rackspace, if you will. But there are some other technical reasons, and I'll let Ken jump in and talk a little bit more about that. But I think from a business perspective, those are the components for sure.
Yeah, well, and I mean, and for apps that are written for multi-tenancy and public cloud offerings in mind, right? Clearly, they benefit from replacing those apps on an Azure or an AWS or Rackspace Cloud. But there's this other band of workloads like that just still assume more traditional infrastructure style, right? But customers, what we're seeing is we still have customers that are like, I know this isn't a cloud-enabled app, but wouldn't it be nice if I could have capacity, maybe not in real time, but in a manner that's more timely than like having a cabinet racked and sent to the loading dock in 2 weeks, and then they want something that's faster than that, and that's where things like hosted vSphere become more of a sort of pragmatic middle ground on this journey to the cloud, and that's really kind of what I believe was the intent behind the offering, right?
Exactly. And the financials behind it, I mean, if you look at it from a strictly financial perspective, the whole CapEx outlay that a business has to do in order to consume the new technologies, and just like everything else, the next new thing that comes out of VMware has a bigger expanse of what you need to buy in order to fully consume it. Coming to a company like Rackspace and consuming this allows you to take this full CapEx model and turning it into OpEx. So in layman terms, what does that mean? That's pretty much like leasing a car. You take this, so writing a big check, you just break it up over months, and you don't have the amortization or depreciation cycle that you have if you were to buy it yourself. So at Rackspace, we let you expand and contract as you need. We're not punitive to you. So as your business needs change, we can definitely accommodate. And then you're out of the like you said, the business of racking and stacking things. That's what we do, and we do very well. So it lets you, again, get back to focusing on your product, your specific things that you're taking to market, and offloading from a financial perspective, operational perspective, things to us, and stuff that we do well.
Very cool.
Yeah. Most IT groups have had that painful process where maybe every 3 years or so they're going through hardware refreshes. They're having to look at what's the new storage system that we should purchase to meet these needs and decommission the old system, or what new servers should we standardize on now for this platform. And those are things that Rackspace does all the time. So taking those scenarios out of the picture of this cyclical thing of going to business leadership and asking for more investment into the IT infrastructure, when you can move to Rackspace with some of this workload and just have that monthly cost, it's a lot easier to justify.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we see this a lot where we get RFPs for prospects or customers that they need more data center capacity, but they're not really super excited about building a new data center right now in today's world, right? But they also know they've got workloads that they're not just going to go forklift into Amazon and have a good outcome, right? And so they're looking to service providers to continue delivering infrastructure that they have built expertise around, example, vSphere powered infrastructure, but delivered in a way that still is interoperable with their existing standard operating procedures for managing infrastructure, and again, doesn't require them to change the whole way of life, but also doesn't require them to build another data center and spend millions of dollars, right? So all that out of the way, then let's get into like what dedicated vCenter actually means, sort of the services and software and ops that make up dedicated vCenter as a product at Rackspace, Ken. And we'll use the diagram. The left-hand side, we'll ignore the Rack Connect global stuff for now to have the discussion.
Sure. So just like we were mentioning with the data center and server networking storage infrastructure, Rackspace also provides that layer on top of it with the vSphere product. So as you can see in the diagram here, what we're doing is providing a management cluster that is going to run the VMware services for the dedicated vCenter instance for your deployment at Rackspace. So we've got the vCenter virtual machine, and we've also got an update manager service running on a Windows VM. We also provision vRealize operations, and we have a VM recovery appliance that facilitates image level backups of those virtual machines, so that infrastructure is backed up and recoverable in your environment. So you can think of it the same way as that traditional old style hosting partner, where they're taking care of the servers and managing the relationship with the server vendor and taking care of break fix on the server platform. We're sort of doing the same thing at the VMware level. We're managing that relationship with VMware. We've got direct access to immediate support from VMware for very complex issues. We also manage that environment, monitor it, make sure that the vCenter services and supporting services stay up and available to you, so that you can really focus on just operating the thing. That whole solution becomes a service then that you're receiving from Rackspace.
Yeah, and to just add a couple notes to Ken's thoughts here, I think with our approach, the way we've delivered these solutions, again, speaking of control capacity and trying to mimic and help customers extend into us, led us to win this year's service provider innovation award from VMware themselves, which is something that it's again a first time for Rackspace, but again speaks to our solutions and how we've been able to bring products and options to market, which really keeps us out of our customers' way. I mean, we have some opinions about what are built and how they're built, but they are really designed to help our customers accelerate the consumption of our products, if you will. So anyway, just wanted to kind of throw that out there as well.
Yeah, well, it's a good time to compare and contrast a bit, because there are literally thousands of vCloud powered multi-tenant offerings out there from different service providers, and folks some that we compete with and some that we don't, right? But the primary difference is that those people are using VMware vCloud technology to power generally a multi-tenant or public offering, right? But that's not at all what we're doing here, is it? How is what we do different?
Yeah, ours is very dedicated. South of the firewall, and our customers own or are leasing the infrastructure, so they have some good bounds onto what their performance and metrics look like, which the multi-tenant world can't really offer you. But it's unique in the market as a whole of how we approach it. So our whole idea here, specifically with vCloud and vCenter, is to be the friend of central IT, so that if they want a multi-tenant, if they want to do something, we effectively create them a dedicated vBubble, lack of a better word,
right,
so that they have the ability to customize it and make it fit their needs, versus us having a very opinionated view of how we're going to do multi-tenancy or what have you, and kind of forcing our consumers to kind of accommodate our view of the world. And Ken, you've seen this a lot. I'm kind of curious from your perspective.
Yeah, I would really what an IT group is going to get from this type of an offering is very known quantities of service that they're receiving in this solution, because just like if you're gonna get a server from HP, you know the specs of that server, the CPU, the RAM, the hard drive performance of the hard drives you got in it, and you expect it to function at that level. The same thing with this dedicated vCenter offering. You know what VMware says that a vCenter server can handle as far as concurrent operations and how many hypervisors it can manage, and all those configuration maximums that are out there. When you have a dedicated vCenter, you know that you can get that out of it because it's just for you. It's not being leveraged by who knows how many other customers. So
right.
It's only servicing your needs.
Right, and that sort of consistency is what led us to pick to do this show during a month when we're focused on performance, right? Because we're not here sharing tips about how to squeeze an extra few IOPS or cycles out of vSphere. It's not what we're doing today, but we are talking about how this offering really puts the customer in the driver's seat when it comes to sort of the knobs and dials that you turn around performance in ways that you just can't from, again, most of the multi-tenant vCloud-based offerings out there from other providers. So it's a good discussion to have. I will say, in the name of time, we should probably move on to the next piece, which is, okay, if we have a buyer, if we have a customer who is operating this infrastructure on behalf of their customers, and we have Rackspace that is operating elements of the infrastructure to take that off our customer's plate, what exactly is the delineation of responsibilities between customer and Rackspace, and how do we handle it, manage that? How do we document that, right? So we actually have a document that helps with this, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, we've got the customer handbook. That's something that we put together for our customers to help them understand how they're going to collaborate with Rackspace in this solution, because like we've said, we're trying to hand this over to the customer as a tool that they can run with. But there are going to be certain things that they need to interact with Rackspace, and this handbook helps them to understand that. If there's something perhaps with the hypervisors that it seems like maybe there's a setting that needs to be changed, well, the hypervisors are something that are really strictly managed by Rackspace, because as Shantu mentioned, we're managing thousands of hypervisors for customers, and so we know what really works well. So we're going to tune those to meet almost every need. But if there's a unique use case, then this describes the interaction there that you would have with Rackspace to get that adjustment made for your environment. And that's something we're happy to do, is to adjust the environment for your needs. We start with a known configuration, but then we can be flexible and work with you in the areas where you may not have that full administrative control over certain things, but we're going to collaborate with that, with you on that, to be your co-administrators in certain aspects of the environment.
Very cool. Yeah, that document is one of my favorite documents around, because it does get very specific in terms of like what a customer can expect that we will do, who owns what in terms of the ownership of different services and features between us and the customer. And it's a great document that we like to hand up to customers before they are even a customer, right?
Yeah, and
early on in the discussion.
The roles and responsibilities that are described there really help you to see in just a tabular format what are things we expect you to take care of, and what are things you can expect Rackspace to take care of. And even things like the permissions that you have within vCenter. There's a lot of permissions in vCenter, but we list those out in a table so you can see exactly which ones you have access to, and you can compare that with any third-party tools or other activities that you're expecting to take within this environment, and you'll know up front if this is going to work for you.
Okay, great. And so it's funny, I kind of ate into my next topic already early around single tenancy, but we don't have to obviously read this document to everyone who's watching this show, but there's some let's do some for example discussion, right? So for example, when we're talking about networking constructs, both physical, virtual, help me understand or help the audience understand who does what when it comes to networking. Like, our customer is configuring virtual distributed switches, or is that Rackspace? How does that play out?
Yeah, within the networking, we're still relying heavily on the fact that we're giving you a top-of-rack firewall, and we've got VLANs configured below that. The hypervisors are trunked into that switching infrastructure, so we can provision VLANs for our customers very quickly, and we go ahead and configure the virtual switches and make that network available to you within the vCenter environment. So we're handling that abstraction of the physical networking into the virtual area. So we manage that for you, and you simply request. If you need another network segment, we make that happen. We also provision public IPs for you. You let us know how many you need for whatever services. If you're going to access any of these services publicly or make them available publicly, if you're going to do it all private through, like what we're going to talk about in a little bit about what Rack Connect can do, you don't need public IPs if you're just going to consume it internally.
Yeah, and just to add one thing is I think the key of customization, like a lot of the stuff that you see, and specifically to the architecture, is this is what we come to market, or here's your boilerplate, if you will. And with every customer that we deal with, we give them the ability to do some degree of customization that allows them to configure to fit their needs as well. So yeah, I mean, our initial approach is here's the best practices and what we've learned from doing this for over a decade. Yeah. But this doesn't mean like this is the only available set of options, if you will. And I think that's kind of important to remember that.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, then with that, I'm going to move into. I think looking at time, let's go ahead and talk about some of the supporting technologies then that we make available as either sometimes with the offering directly or can be delivered optionally with the offering. So in this case, we'll talk about Rack Connect first. So, in the diagram, one of the things that I wanted to show is that if we deploy dedicated vCenter on its own without Rack Connect Global, generally the assumed means of connectivity is access from the public internet. Right, so we have a lot of customers that might have like a reseller use case where they want these VMs to be publicly available to the internet with the firewall edge, the physical edge device, enforcing access control policy to these VMs. So, so that's one use case that we see. But if you're IT and what you really want is an extension of your own data center, right? Then having public internet access to these VMs is probably like the last thing that you want, because you've got your own sort of perimeter controls that you've set up to manage your infrastructure, and the last thing you want is this whole separate silo of infrastructure with its own set of like policy and perimeter controls, right? That you have to manage. And so what we're showing here is how through Rack Connect Global, customers could theoretically use Equinix Cloud Exchange to create a virtual private circuit from their data center into a Rackspace facility, and then have all network traffic, inbound, outbound, traverse that virtual circuit back to the customer's data center, and then out to the world through existing customer managed perimeter security, right? And so, and the way that customers achieve that would be to use, I think currently 10 are available today, with more on the way. There are 10 different Equinix facilities in the US that customers can treat as a point of presence. And a customer in this case, if they ran their own data center, they could terminate a leased line into the nearest available Equinix point of presence, and then from there provision virtual circuits in a matter of hours and days into Rackspace, right? And so what that offers customers is the ability to have dedicated private circuit connectivity from their data center to Rackspace footprint, but to not have to do that over the public internet, over VPN, to not have to do the more traditional MPLS private circuit from their data center all the way to Rackspace over some carrier backhaul, and then have to deal with slow change, in the event that you need more capacity. This Equinix Cloud Exchange allows you to kind of dial up capacity more rapidly, and the only real physical private connectivity you have to manage is the last mile from your facility to the nearest compatible Equinix facility, which we'll treat as a point of presence. So that's kind of tricky stuff. A lot of the deeper details about how that works was covered, I think, 2 episodes ago in our Rackspace or Rack Connect Global Deep Dive. But again, the idea here is private connectivity. This logically would appear as if it were operating it to your users in your data center, and we would be joining like layer 2 domains, if you will, or layer 2 or layer 3, and you could even bring your own IP space into Rackspace using things like Rack Connect Global. So with that out of the way, I mean, like that opens up some possibilities, right? That generally people didn't choose to operate at a hosting provider. Anything you guys want to comment on that or clear up if I botched?
No, I think you hit all those points, and having the stuff like the Equinix exchanges. So even looking back to even the late '90s, we had the network exchanges. The exchanges that were in Seattle, and all the NAPs that were available. The problem always ended up being is managing and maintaining these relationships in order to get you that bandwidth today, and that's why I think the partnership with Equinix and Rackspace to be able to bring the solution takes that complexity out of the picture. It's not so much a technical complexity, it's also arranging and getting the lease line in place and what have you. So as long as you're connected to your provider, whether it be Verizon, whoever might be the case, to an Equinix exchange, that opens up a plethora of options for you of how to connect to this infrastructure, and makes, I think, our offerings quite a bit more accessible regardless of where you're on the globe. To date, I think the last I remember, there's 120 countries represented if you look at our customer base, and I think the ability to be able to tap into this exchanges gives us that ability, or that kind of expands your access, if you will.
Yeah, it helps, and we see use cases too where customers where they just have gear that we can't accommodate here. Like I've seen some, in years past, some unfortunate opportunities where we had everything we needed to help a prospect become a customer, except we couldn't accommodate their, one rack of IBM powered gear,
Right.
and like it was such a bummer because it's just the one thing we couldn't do, and this again provides an opportunity where if a customer has a bunch of legacy infrastructure that they need to be as part of the whole package, they can choose to deploy that into a colo cabinet at an Equinix facility, and then easily, again, cross-connect through Equinix Cloud Exchange into the infrastructure that lives at Rackspace. So it's nice. It's nice to have that in our toolbox now because it sort of expands the use cases that we can accommodate here at Rackspace for sure.
Yeah, and then and the complexities around compliance and what have you, this kind of simplifies that as well, because with Equinix being compliant with everything, and then so it's not like you're having to reinvent the wheel or rediscover from scratch. You're already consuming an existing service that has gone through the compliance side of things, which should make life quite a bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm gonna keep moving then to I know one of the things we wanted to touch on was tools for management like VROps. So tell me a little bit about how we deploy VROps with dedicated vCenter and what customers get when we deploy that on their behalf.
Yeah, so we really thought it was important, since this is a product that we're expecting our customers to sort of self-manage the workload and the deployment of these virtual machines consuming this infrastructure that they've received from Rackspace. We thought it was really important to provide our customers with a tool that helps them to monitor and manage that environment. And vRealize Operations is just a key thing there to give our customers insight into what they're doing and how the environment's performing. So for each dedicated vCenter customer, we deploy a dedicated instance of vRealize Operations Manager. And that enables the system level view of the infrastructure that is provisioned there and how it's performing, and also enables insight into the virtual machines themselves. So we're adding into that, it's using the newest version of vRealize Operations Management 6.1, which includes the functionality called Endpoint Operations Management. And this works similar to what used to be a standalone component, vRealize Hyperic, but it's now a Java-based agent that can be installed so that it gets insight into the operating system of the virtual machines. And also we include some management packs that enable metrics to be collected from application stacks like SQL Server, Active Directory, Tomcat, things like that. So you get really deep insight all collected up into this one management tool that you can see, you can get alerts on, and it really helps you manage that whole environment that you're spinning up at Rackspace.
That's great, and so I think it's great that we provide that out of the box so that it's there, again, especially knowing that this is a solution that customers are going to take a more active role in managing than some of our more traditional products. But then what about other tools then? If a customer has their own management in platforms or software that they've invested in on-premise, in theory they can use that as well, is that correct?
Yeah, that's the great thing about having dedicated vCenter from Rackspace as opposed to maybe what some other hosting providers are doing. Some of them do have a vCenter-based offering that's multi-tenant, but they're putting a portal service on top of it, and you don't have direct access to vCenter. But since you've got a dedicated vCenter at Rackspace, pretty much any of the tools you're using in-house today that work against vCenter in-house, you can also point those at your dedicated vCenter instance at Rackspace, because you'll have API access with the same permission levels that you're logging into the web client with. And so monitoring tools right off the bat, those are going to work. If you're using already a third-party monitoring tool, or if you've got VROps running in-house today, you can add the vCenter at Rackspace into that and get a good view of that. You can also continue to use scripted functionality. Maybe the Power CLI is being used for scripting certain activities, even spinning up virtual machines for workload management. Again, you just point those with the credentials and the API endpoint for dedicated vCenter, and you can use those same scripts against the dedicated vCenter environment.
Yeah. Just to even add a thought there is, as we expand our partner network, if you will, and the different folks that we end up working with. I mean, clearly, Ken mentioned all the VMware tools in specific, but if there's stuff like, you are a customer of RightScale today, or you're a customer of, Service Mesh out of CSC, or some other tool that you're using, since we give you those API level access, it lets you plug in what you've already invested in. The whole idea here is not to, kind of steer you or force you down a path, but to be able to be as flexible as possible with all the investments you've made, making this a true extension versus having to kind of lift and shift into our environment. So yeah, we have customers that have, built a ton of their own scripting. They've kind of built a library of scripts and tools that they're running in the vCenter. It's just an endpoint shift to us to be able to do that. Now, as Ken had mentioned earlier, there is definitely a permissions list that we have to validate to make sure that we're not running afoul of any of those. But for the most part, we're able to accommodate, I would venture to say here, and keep me honest, Ken, 90-95% coverage.
Yeah, because most of the activities that anybody's going to do in vCenter are virtual machine based. That's what you're really working with in day-to-day operations. You're not constantly changing cluster settings or hypervisor settings or building and tearing down networks every couple of hours. It's virtual machines that you're working with. So yeah, all those existing things that you're doing today in-house, even like vRealize Orchestrator. Most of the Orchestrator workflows are around virtual machine activities, so most of those workflows are going to work if you point your Orchestrator environment against this.
Yeah, and even tools like service management. If you're a ServiceNow customer, being able to tie that in. So yeah, we've nothing again. We're, in my opinion, pretty unique in the industry in giving you that level of API access to leverage and kind of reuse the investments you've made already. So that's kind of the whole idea here, is to become another tool set or toolkit in Central IT's toolbox that accelerates their ability to service their business units versus having them be in the position to either not be responsive enough or allowing the business units to kind of self-solve. Here the idea is a partnership with Rackspace helps further the central IT cause. And if I were to kind of summarize, it would be that.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think about this a lot. Like I was building a a PowerPoint deck a couple weeks ago, and I was trying to figure out how to represent this problem, and it's like, it's tricky because you've got these users who want stuff now. They need resources and VMs to deploy their apps onto. But then you look at the problems that the general like IT ops guy is focused on, and he's like thinking about deploying and managing SAN, right? It's like, it's a means to an end to get the VMs and the resources to the business, but it's like you're like 2-3 layers deep in the weeds, trying to cable up a SAN and set up iSCSI targets and all this crap, right? And we're we want to help get IT out of that and get them closer to the problem that their business has, which is like, how do I automate the provisioning of VMs to these users? How do I get out of the business of trying to predict capacity and forecast for hardware and get into the business of just, making that not my problem, right? The hardware will always be there because the service provider has my back, and now I get to focus on managing change in a way that's like less painful for my users, right? That's really what we want, what the message we want to get out there, because service providers historically haven't historically been like top of mind for IT as a partner. Historically, service providers have been competition for IT, right? So we're trying to help cross that chasm and help demonstrate that we have capabilities and products that now can help enable IT, such as dedicated vCenter. And I think we're starting to see some reward for that effort, this year in terms of the customers that we're winning and bringing into the dedicated vCenter product. So
I think that's especially true for us is having to compete against the central IT has been something we've been doing for a long time. So but anyways, I totally agreed with the statements you made.
And for better or for worse, we got pretty good at it, right? So we had to learn a lot of lessons over the last couple of years to really figure out how to like actually go help speak to IT and enable IT. And again, it's been great because we've opened up a whole new type of customer that we didn't really have access to 5 years ago. So it's been good. Let me see here. I've got some in the name of time. Let's go ahead and jump to questions. I've got a few that were submitted here. I'm just going to kind of pick them in order. So for you guys, the first question is, how do I get VMs into this environment?
Well, again, since we're looking at this being a data center extension, you'll have access to vCenter itself. So you can use that dedicated network that you've set up into Rackspace as your transit for moving workload and getting those VMs into there. But you can also use Rackspace services. So we can also take like a NAS device. You can put a lot of your virtual machines on a NAS device and ship it to our data center, and we'll connect that into your environment and mount that data store, and you can import all those virtual machines right into your vCenter environment. So there's quite a few different ways that you can do this, but again, a lot of the native VMware tools are gonna help you with that process. If it's just a few virtual machines that you're moving initially, you can just use some of the standard tools to migrate VMs from one vCenter to another.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ken. And then the next question we have is, what vSphere version and license are we providing with dedicated vCenter? And my addition to that is, does it matter?
Well, yeah, to some degree it does. So we're using the vSphere Enterprise Plus license, and that's what we're providing to our customers. And you do have the option of bringing your own licensing to Rackspace, and we'll let you do that. But you have to have the Enterprise Plus license in order for us to add that key to activate your environment in the dedicated vCenter. And as far as the version, we're currently running still at 5.5, and we're about to release and move up to vSphere 6. A lot of people might wonder, why are you still on 5.5? 6 has been out for a while. Well, we want to make sure it's really stable and meets all the needs, and that we can really support it well and have the confidence that VMware knows the answers to all the issues that we might be faced with. So you'll generally see us at least wait till like an update 1 before we'll move to a next major version. And so once that's happened, now we're working through our product development cycle, and we'll be moving on to vSphere 6 soon. But whether, as far as whether it matters, probably to many customers, the difference between 5.5 and 6 doesn't really have a significant difference as far as their ability to create virtual machines and deploy their applications on it and meet the needs of their business. So we haven't seen a super strong demand for having a specific version of vCenter, just a current version of vCenter, and one that's very stable so that they can have the assurance that it's going to be reliable for them and they can focus on their business.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. I've got another one here. It says, what do I do if I need something done to the environment that requires permissions that I don't have?
So that comes back into that collaboration that we want you to have with us. We want to be a partner in your business, and so we want to have dialogue. And so if there's something in the environment that you feel like you need to have adjusted, then all you're going to do is go to our support portal or call us on the phone and say, hey, it looks like I need this permission because I'm using this tool, or I need something done, or maybe I just want a setting change because I want it to mirror more closely what I'm doing in my data center. You'll get on the phone with some of our virtualization engineers. They'll look at that setting and they'll make that change for you, and you'll be on your way.
Okay. Okay. And then, so what happens if I sign up for this today on 5.5 and then 6.0, you guys decide to roll out 6? What is that experience like for me as a customer when we upgrade?
Yeah, so what you'll experience there is you'll get a maintenance request that will come in. And once we've rolled out version 6, we'll start going back to all of our customers that are on 5.5, and we'll say, hey, look, here's a version 6 update that's available for your environment. And here's the process that it's going to involve. We would like to schedule a time with you to make that happen, but we understand that maybe there's something that's tied specifically to that version that you're using. Maybe you're using some third-party tools. They're not yet certified against a new version that we're rolling out. So we'll really partner with you again to make sure that what we're hosting for you, what we're providing to you, meets your needs. So we'll ask you for that upgrade path if this is a good opportunity for it, and we'll move ahead as a partnership there. And if it's not a good time, we'll hold off.
Okay. Okay, great. And then we had another one just come through that says, what if I want to connect or manage 2 or more servers with vSphere? Is it possible? I know locally I could do this. I'm trying to understand if that means, you definitely can do that all within the confines of the Rackspace data center. I'm trying to understand if that means, across sites, right? Yeah,
so some customers have asked if they can basically connect their on-site vCenter with the Rackspace vCenter.
Okay.
So putting it into the same domain, essentially, for authentication and those purposes. We can use the same Active Directory domain, so you could authenticate against it with the same account, but we don't, at this point, provide the ability to use like the same platform services controller and SSO domain between your data center and Rackspace, because our engineers need to have access into this environment and control it, and having shared credentials for us into your private data center is not a great idea.
Right.
And we need to make sure we've got a controlled environment here. So we enable a single authentication source for what our customers may need to do, but as far as having a single pane of glass perhaps within the vSphere environment itself between the customer data center and Rackspace, we don't allow that at this point.
That makes sense. And it's not to say a customer couldn't have, say, just managed bare metal, like managed colo bare metal, and install their own bits on, right, to achieve that outcome if there's a technical requirement for it. But that would not, we would not be providing any sort of like management of the virtual layer in that scenario, right? We'd only be managing the physical hardware, and everything above that would be customer responsibility. So it can be done, but it's not in scope for the actual dedicated vCenter product.
Yeah, it wouldn't really be this product then if that's how it was done.
Okay.
Right, and it gives us an opportunity to even have this consultative discussion to say, is this really what you want? Because sometimes the desired outcome, so we can focus on the outcomes and recommend a good path to get there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my question would be, what is this outcome? What is the desire for, the set, features or functionality, and how can we? Because we have again the portfolio of everything Rackspace available to us, so we can mix and match and kind of put together a solution that works the best, that allows us to still be a very effective partner to you and the customer, but also we don't want to get in your way, either.
Yeah.
So I think this, with folks like Ken and what have you that are and a part of our architect group can sit and have this collaborative discussion on making sure that your end state is achieved.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. I think that's it. I'm just trying to see if I missed any. I think that's all the questions we have. One thing I did want to do was we've got about 10 minutes left in the show by my watch, and sometimes the note for the viewers, sometimes the stream lags a few minutes behind. So I promise we didn't start late today. But I think we're going to go ahead and jump into summary and key takeaways. So the one thing I had written down that I wanted to make sure I reiterate was, let's revisit the target customer for dedicated vCenter, right? Who is the target customer for dedicated vCenter, Shantu?
Well, definitely Central IT. I think that's who we need to partner with more, and we need to be seen as a resource versus competition, I guess. Okay. So hence the partnership. But I'd say that absolutely that's where we shine the best.
Okay, great. And then I wanted to make sure that viewers, I kind of did a hack job of talking about Rack Connect Global, right? So I talked about what it enables as far as the data center extension use case, but I didn't really get into do a great job of talking about how exactly Rack Connect Global works. And for that, you'll want to go to rackspace.com/deep dive and find the previous deep dive hangout with Phil Sperfera and Shannon Enix, where we talk about Rack Connect Global. I also want to encourage folks to, we show the architecture diagram in the show, but and we show the customer handbook, but I encourage you to fill out the form and actually get the high-res architecture diagram and the actual copy of the customer handbook, so that you can get a really clear picture of what it is we're doing with vSphere and our dedicated vCenter product. And then with that, any final thoughts from you, Shantu?
No, I think, I strongly believe that our offering is very unique in the industry, and I think we're very well positioned to be a partner to most businesses, whether you're mid-market, enterprise level in a business, especially looking to get out of your data centers. I think we have a very compelling set of offerings, and we have extremely smart guys like Ken that are staffed here that can really help make the right decisions and guide you in a manner that I think would benefit you, the customer, the most. So. Yeah, as you mentioned, definitely reach out to us if we can help assist or give any additional information on our products as they stand.
Very cool. And Ken, how about you?
Yeah, no, I really wanted to highlight again that handbook, because I think that's just a key thing there. If you're really curious about dedicated vCenter and how it functions for you potentially, read through that handbook. It's got a lot of detailed information about what you're getting and how you can use that. And again, as an IT group, if you're already managing a VMware environment in-house today, then you already know you can run this product at Rackspace. You can operate it, you can have a comfort level there, and you can use all of your technical know-how and apply it to that deployment, and it'll give you that ability to envision what's happening. Even though it's not in your data center, you can't walk over and touch that server, you're still going to have that knowledge and you can apply it to this.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for your time, Ken and Shantu. I really appreciate it. And thanks to the viewers for taking the time to listen, and both the live viewers we had and those on demand. So we're looking forward to see you all again next week, where we go deep into EMC storage with our product managers, as well as some experts from EMC. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.